Hello gang, it's been a while since we've talked Grid Zone, so I want to do something a little different here. You know, Grid Zone being a fictional game, being a fictional sport, sometimes it's kind of difficult to convey the fun and the engagement that you get with this game online. So I just wanted to share some things that are going on, basically under the radar, if you will. So I've got some feedback here from a few different customers as examples of guys that are playing leagues. If you've been on Delphi, then you probably saw, let's see, Dave, Dice Roller 1, after Turf War 2nd Edition was released. He took off and started playing the AGL and for the Aurora Cup, and he got about a month into the season. He was doing really nice summaries. His league looked really good. Denver was off to an excellent start in his league 3 weeks in, and he has since trailed off, but I'm hoping maybe David will see this video and get back into it. I'd like to see where that goes, if nothing else, because I am going to do my own AGL Season One run through, and it'd be fun to have somebody to compare with. If you were following on Delphi last fall, Mike Bowling was doing the Stone Cold Hockey with the Central Cities League, and his league and mine ran almost concurrent, and so it was fun to compare notes with him as we both made our way through the season. And so it'd be fun to do something similar, perhaps with David's league, and he's left off at about the same place that I am up to, as you'll see. At any rate, so yeah, his example online can show, kind of illustrates, if you want to get into the details of the game. He had some really detailed summaries, and had some really good game results too. Close games, 38-20 was the last game he reported on, with Memphis kind of upsetting Denver, just by scraping by 2 points. Pretty neat. Elsewhere, the king of Grid Zone in my mind is, as far as I know, Keith Neems, who has been playing grid ball in some form or another since its inception, like 12 years ago. And originally it was a card-driven game. Some of you guys will remember that. Some months later, it had to be converted or changed to a dice-driven game. And I think that's the game that Keith has probably played the most. To give you an idea, last summer, so we're talking last June, almost a year ago, 10 months ago, I heard from Keith, and he, at that point, communicated that he had just played his 3,400th game of grid ball over the years, and at that point he was playing the Turf War 1st Edition version of the game. He said, in 3,399 games, I've had 5 shutouts. And then he just got 2 of them in back-to-back games with 3,400 and 3,401. Just crazy. He said that's why this game remains great, and that's what keeps him playing. He also shared sometime later, I didn't write down the date on this, I think this was using Turf War 2nd Edition, so I got an update from him not so long ago, and if you can imagine that, I mean, that's a lot of games. And he plays short seasons. It's a small league. I think it's a 16 league, probably playing a 5-game season or something really short. But that also keeps it fresh, right? Because he likes to engage with the off-season aspect of it, and the player aging and retirement and drafting and all that kind of stuff, which is kind of a mini game into itself. So he has played something like 80, he's over 80 seasons. I think he's actually closer to 90 probably now. But that shows you that that this game is sustainable, and that once you get into it, and kind of get sucked into it, and these players develop personalities, and these teams develop histories, that it accomplishes, I believe, what it's set out to do. And and everybody is going to have their own house rules to make their league work the way they want, or to have some aspect of the game work a certain way, whether it's touchdowns. I've heard from people who want to add, kicking or some form of special teams aspect to the game. And, that's all well and good. If it works for you, have at it. That's, Grid Zone is a toolkit for you to just sort of run with. At any rate, getting back to Keith and his latest update, he shared this about his Eastern and Western Conference finals, his playoffs of one of his recent seasons. I think it was season number 80. So he says here, Philadelphia trails by 6 with 1 play left in crunch time. They get 1 point and then 4. And then they slow play down for 2 plays, but only 1 point. So I guess the score's tied. I'm going off of what he wrote here. He gets to the last play, game tied. It's a pass play, interception, the D12 roll of 7 or above, and Gotham wins, but the dice roll came up a 5. So it's a tie. It was just the 3rd tie in playoff history in 80 seasons. And in this case, they don't do overtime. So they just go to the other, it's like a home and home series at that point. So in other words, you tied on your home turf as the top seed, and now you've got to go away and replay the game. So the tie becomes game 2. In the replay, it was Philadelphia versus Gotham. In the replay, Gotham gets the ball with only 1 crunch time play left. And I'm having a hard time interpreting what he's saying. 2-point, 6-pointer, okay, and a 1-pointer. So, in other words, it sounds like they put together a big drive. So a 2-point game, 6-point game, then a 1-point game. They had 1 play left. And at that point, they got the 1 point and the touchdown needed. So they were down 13 at the beginning of that play. I totally botched this, but I'm trying to interpret what he wrote here. So, in other words, in crunch time, Gotham is down 13 points. They get the ball, and they get a big drive. And on the final play, it's a 1-point game, or it's a 1-zone game to get them in the end zone for the touchdown. That's a 14-point drive, and they win the game right at the whistle, 32-31. All right, so I got through it. Good stuff there. Oh, but he goes on. In the Western, that was Eastern Conference. In the Western Conference, Colorado gets the ball down 10 to Santa Fe. They have 1 play and crunch time. So 1 play in regulation plus crunch time. They get 3 1-point plays in a row and a 6. So now they are down 1 with 1 play left. Boom, touchdown. And Colorado comes back to beat Santa Fe 37-33. So big drama, late game drama in both of those conference finals. So this leads to Gotham and Colorado meeting in the finals. And would you believe this? The score in that game, after all that tight drama in the conference finals, the score in the final game, Gotham 65, Colorado 0. Only the 10th shutout in playoff history, the 10th shutout in league history, okay, and the first shutout ever in the playoffs, a complete whitewashing by Gotham to finish that season. So that was a very memorable postseason for his little league as they go into their 9th decade of history. Wow. Okay, lots of good stuff there. Somebody else who's been playing Grid Zone consistently for several seasons is Brock Riblet. You've probably seen him online on occasion. And he started off with his Grid Zone West Coast League using Turf Wars First Edition 4 or 5 years ago. And I guess 3 or 4 years ago it would be. But he's got 5 seasons done, or he's at the end of his 5th season. So he started this as his first 8-team league, and he didn't bother associating the teams with like a given city or anything like that. He just came up with these nicknames and ran with it, and let the teams sort of take their own personality a bit more organically, if you will. So his title division is the Sand Dollars, the Tinseltowners, the Crimson Surf, and the Half Shells. And then in the Coastal Division, the Sea Otters, Tiger Sharks, Belugas, and Lighthouses. Okay, so in his first season, the Lighthouses were led by their MVP quarterback, Tom Portis. They had a dominant championship game victory, and then Portis retired right after that game and rode off into the sunset. And in Brock's imagining of this league, Tom Portis now does the play-by-play or color commentary for his Grid Zone games. Pretty cool. In year 2, he had a Cinderella season occur where the Belugas, who were not considered expected to do much, just kind of got lucky with the dice, and they had a magical 7-3 run that season. They ended up getting into the playoffs where they would face the Tinseltowners in Ocean Bowl 2, and the Belugas, behind their star wide receiver Flint Holiday, took down the Tinseltowners to win an unlikely title. So their Cinderella season, unlike a lot of real Cinderella seasons where you make it to the championship but can't win it all, these guys took it all the way through. Pretty neat for the Belugas. Pretty neat for Brock to witness that to happen in his league. In year 3, perhaps the greatest player in league history thus far, Johnny Pasqualetti, they call him Boardwalk Johnny, tore through the league, and he got his title with a blowout win over the Lighthouses in the end. So a dominant, career-defining season for Boardwalk Johnny there. Year 4 saw the rise of the Half Shells. So here's a team that hadn't done much, and they'd been getting high draft picks for several years. Well, finally, all that paid off, and the Half Shells. Let's see, it says. Yeah, the Half Shells made it all the way through the playoffs into Ocean Bowl 4, where they actually played their best game of the season to crush the Tiger Sharks, and they get to see it through also. So here's a team that built through the draft, and now has found success taking the league title, and that brings us up to year 5. That's where he is now. There was 1 week left in the regular season as he wrote this, which was probably about a week ago. He may be into his championship game already. At that point, the Half Shells, Tinseltowners, and Crimson Surf were all still alive for an Ocean Bowl berth. And the neat thing about the way this season was concluding at the time is that 2 teams in the same division, the Sea Otters and the Tiger Sharks, were going into the final game of the season with an 8-1 record. So it's really the kind of the biggest game of the year, because no matter who wins that game, that team will be favored, to win the championship in the postseason. So this meeting between these two teams in the regular season takes on new weight, you could say. And so that season at the time of this update was incomplete, and we'll look forward to seeing how that panned out. Additionally, Brock got about 2 or 3 seasons in, so I guess at the beginning of the 3rd season of his West Coast League, he decided to start another 8-team league, which he calls the Great Plains League, and he took us the same approach. Just went with team nicknames, didn't assign them to cities. And so this is an expansion league that runs concurrent to his West Coast League. So he's running 2 separate 8-team leagues. And I won't go into the details on that league just yet, but that speaks volumes, right? So he's enjoyed his first league so much that he wanted to do a second league and have them running concurrently. At the end here, he says, after hundreds of games in the last 5 years or so, I've made this continuing league an integral project that I will never stop, he says. I may one day have a championship game between the 2 league winners, sort of like a yearly Super Bowl, but I will never combine the leagues. They will always be separate leagues. He just enjoys that aesthetic or that dynamic going on within his grid zone sports world. So there are some neat examples. One other thing that we'll be following here on the Gamescape channel will be Scott Long's Moark League, which I think is a really neat project. It's bigger than just grid zone, but there is a grid zone component to it. So it is a 2-conference, 6 teams per conference, so 12-team league, but they play completely within conference. So you're going to have a short season, 10-game season, home and home, on each conference side, the Missouri side, the Arkansas side, and then whatever team emerges as the champion of those 2 conferences will meet for the title. And he's just getting started on that. So what's really cool about that project, the Moark project in general, is that it's not just grid zone, right? So he's taken these same fictional players that appear on the grid zone rosters, and he's made boxing cards for them. So there is going to be a boxing competition, and he's also taken those same player names, ported them over, and they are the same athletes are going to make up his soccer teams. So that's the 3rd leg of it. And then hockey as well. Same players all the way across the board. These guys are going to play year-round, 4 different sports, and he's going to track all of this in terms of how the cities fare, how they place in the overall standings, and combine all that and have a grand champion at the end based on a points race, adding up all 4 sports. I think I've seen a couple other guys online do this before. Bob Hansen comes to mind, who's done baseball and football and stuff like that using the play games and their fictional component. So it's cool to see somebody doing something similar with Stone Mountain Press games. All right, that brings me now, as I continue to monologue, to my league. And what I've been quietly doing is playing with the AGL set that comes with the core game, both the classic version and the Turf War 2nd edition. And I've been playing both games, and they're similar in a lot of ways, but they're also different in a lot of ways. If you've played both, then you'll know that the classic game is a bit more defensive in general, and there tends to be more quick turnarounds, shorter drives, probably more turnovers, and so the games will tend to be sometimes a little lower scoring, more impact points, stuff like that, as opposed to the turf war game, which is matchup based and sort of favors offense as you go along, and generally makes for more of a high scoring type of game where, one or two big defensive plays can be the difference in the game. So what I've done with that dynamic is I've decided to use the classic game as a inclement weather game, and which is going to be 1 in 6 games as I go through the regular season schedule. Is going to be an inclement weather game. I'll use classic for those games only. I've got the same teams and for both versions of the game, so the AGL is ready for both, and the turf war version is going to be the base game the rest of the time. And so I'm already a month in, and we'll have a graphic to display up in here when I put this, when I do the editing on this video, and you'll see the standings. So kind of like David's AGL league that he was playing, I'm a month in, and Denver has done quite well. They're off to a 3-1 start. They got the biggest points differential with a 57-point gap between points for, points against. Fort Worth is also 3-1. They're right there. Good start for them. Orlando is off to a bit of a slow start. Them and Zach Hardy, which is the league's top quarterback. They're kind of in a group in the middle. Orlando, Milwaukee, Los Angeles, and Portland are all 2-2. Los Angeles got off to a terrible start, but they've since began to bounce back. As I look through the results, this is just through the first month with this 8-team league. The highest scoring game I've had so far was Orlando and Los Angeles. 80 points scored in that game. 48-32, Orlando beats Los Angeles. That was in week 2. The lowest scoring game, 17-12, with Los Angeles beating Birmingham. So Los Angeles involved in both the highest and lowest scoring game. Interestingly, as I talked about the classic version being more defensive, that 17-12 game, LA over Birmingham, was played with Turf War 2nd Edition, not with classic game. So it can vary. And, you'll see the standings there. I already showed them on the graphic. Let's talk about where we are with receiving and rushing. So the top offensive teams have big-time receivers that are really clicking. And you'll see at the top of that receiving list is Jalen Church and Trevor Wood, 1 and 2, and no surprise, right? Denver and Fort Worth, both with 3-1 records at the top of the standings, and these two receivers are at the top of their receiving category. And something I'm doing differently for this in previous runs through the AGL. This is probably my 4th time playing AGL Season 1 in some form or fashion. And so this is the one that I really think will stick, as I don't anticipate making any more changes to Grid Zone from this point forward. And I don't think I've said that before either, so hopefully we're there. Something I'm doing differently, anyway, is in the past I would do the yardage, just because I wanted it to convey and I wanted to frame it and make it feel like football in that regard. And this year I'm just doing the points, just to simplify the process a little bit and kind of re-engage with that idea. It's been a long time since I've really tracked points. And so, points roughly equate to yardage. It would be, take points times 10 point something or times 11 or something like that. And that would be roughly the yardage that you're looking at for these players. So 63 points for Jalen Church receiving through the first month. That's 630 yards receiving in 4 games. Okay, a minimum of 630 yards receiving. Okay, likewise for rushing, going down to that listing, I have Ray McQuiston, no surprise. I think he's the highest rated rusher in the league. And, but even more importantly, he has got the best offensive line there in Milwaukee for blocking in front of him. And Ray McQuiston leads the league by a long shot already. He's had 2 games of 10 points or more, and he has 35 total points rushing through the first month. The next closest is Milo Wheeler of Memphis, which is a bit of a surprise. And Milo hasn't had a big game. He hasn't hit 10 points or more in any game. In fact, 6 points in a single game is his most, but he's been consistent. 6, 4, 5 points a game. So he's just kind of plodding along. I don't imagine Milo Wheeler will be the number 2 rusher come the end of the season, but I do expect Ray McQuiston to be at the top of that list. Who would challenge him? I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. Taylor Craig, maybe? Leroy Dittman from Birmingham? At any rate, that's the start we're off to. And when I come back with another Grid Zone video, I think I'll start doing a game of the week for Grid Zone. So most of the games will be Turf War second edition. On occasion, we'll have a inclement weather game, and we'll do a classic Grid Zone game for that. So you get to see both games in the mix as I go forward. I'm not going to play every game on video, but hopefully just kind of give you a game of the week and an update as I go through this AGL season. All right. Well, that went on for about 28 minutes, so that's enough for me, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye.